Every time we say reparations, somebody panics like we just asked for their entire inheritance. But here's the truth. This country has already paid reparations, just not to us. And not just once, multiple times. So let's stop acting brand new. Reparations are not about guilt. They are about debt. America's been in the red with Black folks for over 400 years. And it's not just slavery either. It's everything after. Stolen wages, stolen land, the GI Bill we were locked out of, the homes we weren't allowed to buy, the neighborhoods we were pushed out of. My grandparents in Virginia had a big house. They built something themselves. They held it down. But do you know what's there now? A highway. Because the government decided that their land was disposable, but convenient for development. And we're just one Black family amongst many more. Reparations is not some favor. It's the bare minimum for a country who made Black struggle policy. Economist Dr. William Darity crunched the numbers. To close the Black to white wealth gap today, 14 to 17 trillion. That's just to bring us even, not ahead, just even. So let's compare. Iraq and Afghanistan wars, 6 trillion. 2008 bank bailout, 700 billion. COVID-era PPP loans, over $800 billion. And most people haven't even paid that back. Congress. So don't tell me we can't afford it. This country finds money for war, for Wall Street, and corporate tax cuts on command. It just doesn't want to write us into the budget. And it's not just checks, though. Let's be real, for many families, that's exactly what it should be. It could look like cash payments like the Japanese Americans received, interest-free home loans for the Black folks that were locked out of generational wealth, student debt cancellation or free college at public HBCUs, land returns for families displaced by urban renewal, tax credits or guaranteed income based on ancestry. And miss me with the how do we prove who qualifies? This country tracks ancestry just fine when it wants to. Native enrollment, Holocaust reparations, the 9/11 Victims Fund. The issue isn't logistics, it's politics. Because if we got what we were actually owed, we'd stop scraping to survive. We'd have what they always feared: wealth, stability, ownership, power. We wouldn't need to ask for a seat at the table. We'd be flipping tables and buying the building. Reparations would not destroy America. They'd reveal it. They'd show who got rich off of stolen land, who passed down trust funds built on unpaid labor, who inherited freedom while we inherited cleanup. So yeah, reparations would change everything. And maybe it's time something finally did.
Greetings everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel once again. And in today's episode, I'll be tackling the issue about Black Americans asking for reparation from the whites. And this has been an issue that has been constant in the United States, as you get to see the brutal past that the Black Americans share with the whites who happened to be the former slave owners. And in this episode today, we are getting to see how different Americans are reacting to this, with some supporting it, with some going against it. Kindly watch the rest of this episode while I come with my commentaries at the end of it.
We want tangibles as foundational Black Americans. And we're not going to let them redefine what reparations mean, right? Is reparations student loan debt? Is reparations HBCU funding? Is reparations minority business loans? Is reparations catfish nuggets? What's reparations? Money! What's reparations? Money! What's reparations? Money! Give yourselves a round of applause. Now, family, when we talk about reparations, we get the same 7 rebuttals from the dominant society. And we need to know how to address their rebuttals when we talk about what we need to get as far as reparations. The first thing that they say is, well, wouldn't reparations be divisive? Wouldn't that make people in the dominant society not like you? Are you here to be liked by the dominant society? Tina Turner told us, what's love got to do with it? We're trying to get our money. We're already divided, but they control our resources. So we want them to divide our money and give it back to us because we're owed a debt as foundational Black Americans. The second thing that they try to tell us is, well, Other people suffered, it just wasn't black people. Irish people were enslaved. Italian people were lynched. Native Americans were mistreated, and they're not complaining, so why are you blacks complaining? Well, the thing is, these people are not complaining because they were compensated. The Irish, who were indentured servants, they got something called freedom dues after their contract ran out. They got money, land, and weapons. They were compensated. Then they were brought into white society to join all the benefits and reap all the gains of being white. When the Italians were lynched down in New Orleans, there was a situation where there was a mass lynching of Italians. Their families were compensated, and the country of Italy was compensated, and the Italians were allowed into white society to reap the benefits. The Native Americans, we know the red ones, they were compensated. They got broke off all types of money, and many of them enslaved us as well, so they need to be cutting a check too. The third rebuttal that they have for us is, well, if you want to get reparations, FBAs, why don't you go to the Africans who sold you? Have y'all heard that one? Well, I say to that, number one, the African who sold us, well, he got a one-off. Number two, those countries don't exist no more. Those countries over there were colonized, and they were absorbed into the white European power structure, so all of their resources were drained. So they need to get the resources from the white power structure in Europe that dominated them, while we're getting money from the white power structure that dominated us, the United States government. Another rebuttal they say, well, all white people didn't even own slaves during slavery. So how are white people responsible? We didn't all own slaves. But it was a slave economy where everybody benefited from the slave economy. So if you were a white person in the 1800s working for the train station economy was built on the resources that were taken back and forth from the south to the north. So you owe. If you worked for an insurance company in the 1800s, yeah, you didn't own a slave, but you were insuring slaves and you were making money off slavery. If you were a white person in the 1800s working for a bank or a factory, you were getting all the raw materials and refining it in those northern factories, benefiting from slavery. So the whole economy was based on the labor of our foundational black American ancestors. The next rebuttal is, well, my family came over after the Civil War. So I wasn't even here during slavery. So how do I owe? When your family was over there in the slums of Europe, they heard about a country that was built up off the wealth from the free labor of our ancestors. And they knew that that wealth was mass distributed from our hands into white society and locked in racially. And they sat over there in Europe and said, sign me up, I want to go over there and be a part of that. So since you want to be a part of it, you're part of the debt and you owe too. The sixth one they say is, well, there's already been reparations paid to black people. Welfare and affirmative action. Number one, welfare was created for white women in the 1930s. Number two, most welfare recipients in America are white people in middle America. The welfare capital is Owsley County, Kentucky, where 99% of the people are white and on welfare. That's the welfare capital. And as far as affirmative action, we know that affirmative action benefits white women more than anybody. So is affirmative action reparations? No. Exactly. And the last thing they say, family, they say, well, listen, why should I, as a good white person, be on the hook for something that I didn't do? Why should my tax dollars pay for something that I didn't do? I didn't own a slave. Did any of you remove red Native Americans from their land? Your tax dollars go to pay for them now. Did any of you put people in concentration camps in Germany? Your tax dollars go to pay off some of the victims of the Holocaust. Did any of you put Japanese Americans in internment camps in World War II. But your tax dollars go to pay the Japanese families. Did anybody here fly a plane in the World Trade Center? You know some of your tax dollars go to those victims too. Did you create a war in Afghanistan? Billions of your tax dollars go to the Afghanistani people. Did you cause a war in the Ukraine? Billions of your tax dollars go to the Ukrainian citizens. So since we're giving all of our tax dollars to these people who are not even citizens for the most part, we're going to make sure the real compensation and the real check is going to be cut for the people who deserved it, who built this country from the ground up, who cultivated the culture in this country. Foundational Black Americans, ladies and gentlemen. Say reparations! FBA! All right, give yourselves a round of applause.
True. Not one black person alive today was enslaved in America. That is true. Black people are wanting free stuff. Okay, I don't know. I want free stuff, so I guess white people want free stuff too. Reparations isn't about someone who had been enslaved and now is not enslaved. We had a chance to do that, and we blew it back in the 1880s and 90s. So 40 acres and a mule, for some it was more, for some it was less. 40 acres and a mule is what was promised to those working on plantations. That never happened. Then sharecropping. Then all the Jim Crow. All of those things prevented Black Americans from establishing any kind of generational wealth up and until the Civil Rights Act. Now, we can argue for a really long time that the Civil Rights Act didn't clear everything up. It didn't. But at least it was now illegal to discriminate. So I want you to think about if your family and ancestors had to start at 1964, where you and your family would be today. How would you have paid for college? Would your family have been able to help you with that? Where would you have lived? Reparations is about making up for what wasn't given then, which could have propelled that community into wealth today. We are finally seeing Black Americans with multi-generational wealth starting to emerge, and it's only going to keep on going, and that's great. But what reparations does is it makes up for the fact that you had all these enslaved Americans, and then, okay, you're free, with nothing. Starting from scratch in a system where they weren't even counted as a full human being, where they were limited in what jobs they could have. They didn't have access to Social Security. Now we have Civil Rights Act, 1964. Everyone has equal rights. So imagine if that's where your ancestors were starting. That's why reparations are important. And that's why I think we're remiss now for not taking a serious look at reparations and how we're going to do that. I know people get all hung up on, how do you prove that your ancestors were enslaved? Okay. How about we give low interest mortgages, interest-free mortgages, free college, and maybe that's the free stuff you're talking about. But that will only better our community. So what's the problem? I don't get what the problem is. So educate me.
When white people in the United States balk at the idea of paying reparations to Black Americans who descended from slaves, they disagree with the Bible. Reparations are a form of compensation or restitution made to those who have suffered injustice particularly those in cases of racial inequality, discrimination, and slavery. The idea of paying reparations to Black Americans is not a new one. It has been a topic of discussion for decades, if not centuries. However, it has gained renewed attention and support in recent years following the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement and the growing recognition of systemic racism in American society. As a Christian, I believe that reparations are not only a matter of justice and equity, but also a reflection of God's character and values. In the Bible, we see numerous examples of God's concern for the oppressed, the marginalized, and the downtrodden. From the Israelites' liberation from slavery in Egypt to the ministry of Jesus among the poor and the outcast, we see a consistent theme of God's love for those who are on the margins of society. One of the key biblical principles that underlie the idea of reparations is the concept of restitution. In the book of Leviticus, we see God commanding the Israelites to make restitution to those whom they have wronged. Leviticus 6, 1 through 5 says, "If anyone sins and commits a breach of faith against the Lord by deceiving his neighbor in a matter of deposit or security or through robbery, or if he has oppressed his neighbor or has found something lost and lied about it, swearing falsely in any of all the things that people do and sin thereby, if he has sinned and has realized his guilt and will restore what he took by robbery when he got it by oppression or deposit that was committed to him or the lost thing that he found or anything about which he has sworn falsely, he shall restore in full and shall add a fifth to it and give it to him to whom it belongs on the day that he realizes his guilt." This passage emphasizes the importance of making restitution to those who have been wronged and not just restoring what was taken, but adding to it as a form of compensation. This principle of restitution can be applied to the issue of reparations to Black Americans who have suffered centuries of enslavement, discrimination, and systemic oppression. Another biblical principle that supports the idea of reparations is the concept of Jubilee. In Leviticus 25, God commands the Israelites to observe a Jubilee every 50th year, during which all debts are forgiven, all slaves to be set free, and all property to be returned to its original owners. This was a radical idea of economic justice designed to prevent the accumulation of wealth and power in the hands of a few and to ensure that all members of society had equal access to resources and opportunities. The idea of Jubilee can be seen as a model for reparations in that it seeks to address the root causes of inequality and oppression rather than just treating the symptoms. By forgiving debts, freeing slaves, and returning property, Jubilee seeks to create a more just and equitable society, one in which everyone has the opportunity to flourish. As a Christian, I believe paying reparations to Black Americans is only a matter of justice and equity, but also it is a reflection of God's values and character. Through the biblical principles of restitution and Jubilee, we see a model for how we can address the historical and systemic injustices that have plagued our society for far too long. While the issue of reparations is complex and contentious, I believe that as Christians, we have a responsibility to seek justice.
Absolutely. 1000% yes. And quite frankly, this should just be something we all agree upon. This should never be a piece of debate, but people are people. Race is going to be racist. So be it, so be it. Shout out to the clips. For those of you that are willing to listen to understand and not listen to respond, I'll break down to you why reparations are owed. You're going to want to do yourself a solid, educate yourself, and do your research. Go to Google, whatever. Blackhistory.org is another great place to start. You're going to want to look up how many race massacres have taken place on U.S. soil. You're going to want to read about each race massacre that's taken place. Rosewood, Tulsa, Wilmington, Detroit, Atlanta, Louisiana. There's some Oklahoma. It's everywhere. It's all over the place. I'm going to work with the most famous example that people know. But understand this is an example, and this is what happened in every other race massacre that's taken place. So Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, I think it's Greenwood, is a section of Tulsa that this black community was. They had everything, right? Because we already didn't want them in our community. We didn't want them around us. We didn't want them patronizing our stores. We wanted to work. We wanted them to work for us for little to no wages. So they built their own. They had houses, they had churches, they had lawyers' offices, doctors' offices, markets, meat markets and stuff, grocery stores. They had one or two commercial planes. They had everything. They didn't need us, and they were away from us. They moved to a different community than us. They, like, we wanted them to leave, they left and sustained themselves. So one day there was a black man riding in an elevator with a white woman. That white woman accused that young black man of assault. Went to court, was proven innocent. That did not matter because hearsay, people ran their mouth, word got around, the newspaper ran a story accusing him of assault. Facts didn't matter because those facts weren't in line with what they chose to believe. And it was either that night or the night before, or the night after rather, it was like hundreds and hundreds of angry white folk, torches in hand, weapons in hand, stood on the line of Greenwood, and they rushed their community. Ran into houses, pulled people from houses, beat them, lynched them, mutilated them in front of their families. Got the whole family in a lot of cases. When we lynched them, we stood around and pointed and laughed like it was a spectacle, like this was a circus. Took pictures of it, shared it all across the country. I mean, they're even on postcards. You can go to damn near any antique mall, especially down here in the South. Won't take long to find stuff like this. This was normal. And then we got an issue with how people choose to talk about Charlie Kirk's craziest shit ever. Whatever, though. So we destroyed everything. We either took everything that they owned for ourselves, and then we made like sundown towns and stuff. We flooded it in a lot of cases. Lake Lanier is an example of that. Or we just straight up destroyed it. So we did that. We never paid it back because the insurance companies, the way that they reported these and labeled these on paper, they labeled them as riots and not massacres. Meaning because they didn't label them as massacres, they weren't legally obligated to pay these people back for what we took from them. There was like one time when that happened. I think Red Cross stepped up and at least helped clean up. I don't think they paid anybody back, but we never paid it back. So we took everything. We never paid it back. And you're telling me we don't owe them? In what world does that make sense? Because you're going to tell them that they can pull themselves up by their bootstraps in a country that was built to oppress them. See how that doesn't make sense when you say that out loud? So yes, reparations are absolutely owed. We didn't even give them the 40 acres and a mule that they were promised when they were freed. Do yourself a solid and do your research. Educate yourself. That path ain't going to be easy. That deconstruction path, not easy. A lot of people quit halfway through or just don't even care to do it at all because it fucks up what they feel is their normal. Do yourself that solid. Deconstruct. Learn. And once you educate yourself properly, everything that I just said clicks. And you understand too that, yes, reparations are owed.
Well, if you've watched to this end, thank you once again, and let's get down to it. For most people, they understand that black people are one of the most disadvantaged group of individuals in the United States. And this goes back to the slavery era period where we get to see that most black American ancestors were brought into the country to work in the cotton fields as slaves. And amid that, we also understand that these African slaves worked under very inhumane conditions. And as much as later on they were granted freedom, you're getting to see that the damage that was caused by this slavery era period is still being felt to this day by the black American descendants. And in doing so, we are seeing that black Americans are asking for reparations. They're actually not starting right now. This asking for reparations for the damage caused by these white slave owners is something that has been going on for quite some time now. And despite of the fact that most of the black Americans and some of their leaders have tried to come out to ask for this reparation, the United States government has always ensured that there has been a gridlock that prevents this from happening. And going back to history, you understand that most former colonial powers actually made reparations to the countries or to the individuals that they had brought into slavery. And a good example is the British Empire. And you get to see that they have recently made some efforts to try and make reparations to most of the individuals that they believed that they benefited from them economically and left permanent damage to them, and they're trying to pay back for this effort that was being owed by these former slaves. And despite of this, you're getting to see that the reparations are also controversial, as the people getting the benefit of these reparations are not the ones affected by it. And going back to the United States right now, you're understanding that Black Americans, also who also are actually currently identify as the foundational Black Americans, believe that the United States government owes them reparation for all the free labor that they offered in the fields and other industries. That is basically from their ancestors, and they have been pushing for this to become a reality. However, as you all know, as it stands right now, no reparations have been offered by the United States government, and there have been multiple challenges that have been actively in place to prevent this from happening. And for most people, they'll ask, how did these reparation stories come into play? Well, going back to 1865, I believe, General William T. Sherman gave out a special order titled number 15, which promised that over 400,000 acres of land confiscated by the Confederate government will be handed over to former enslaved people. However, this didn't come into fruition after the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln, who was in the process of ascending this order, and the incoming president rescinded this order and gave back the land to the former slave owners. And so this marked the birth of the reparation wars by the Black American community and the former slaves, who are trying to seek what they believe that was rightfully theirs after fighting the civil wars and after going through tough and inhumane conditions during the slave trade period that actually enabled their slave owners to acquire massive amounts of wealth. So this war didn't end there, and despite of numerous tries, you're getting to see that this reparation never actually took place. And again, we are noticing that there are other groups that were actually successful in receiving the reparations, as you've watched in the video, and this has not sat well with the Black American community. And going back to the William T. Sherman order, we get to understand that it was famously known as the 40 acres and a mule bill that is still being currently referred to by most Black Americans who are trying to fight for the reparations that they believe the United States government owes them. And again, as you've watched in the videos that I've shared in this episode, you'll notice that there are also some challenges that these Black Americans trying to get the reparations are currently facing in the United States. And one of them is that majority of the whites don't believe that the Black Americans should receive reparations from the United States government, as the evils committed against them was done by their ancestors, and none of the slave owners actually exist to this time, so that makes it impossible for them to directly ask for reparation from the United States government. For the Black individuals, they're arguing that most of them believe that they actually deserve to be given reparation by the United States government, as the government is being viewed as a continuous entity that they believe still owes them the reparation that goes back to their ancestors who were former slaves, and hence they feel entitled to receive the reparation from the government. And this impasse has been crucial in the United States history, as the government knows that, looking at it from a political point of view, with the majority race being against what the minority race wants, this has actually led to a political rail that most politicians don't wish to cross or mess with. So this has made it quite impossible for any bill suggesting reparation for the Black Americans to even make it to mentioning that is in the Congress. Other than that, we're getting to see the huge economic gap that lies between the median white household and the median black household. For instance, according to statistics, we get to see that the median white household holds 8 times the number of wealth that the median black household holds. And in doing so, going back to the history, we're getting to see that this huge generation wealth gap was mainly influenced by the slave era period where we get to see most blacks were being used to generate wealth for the white individuals. And again, due to systemic racism, you get to see that even after these Africans managed to get their independence, they never really got the chance to close in the gap as they were faced with multiple hurdles that unfortunately didn't encourage them to grow economically. And so, doing the maths, it is suggested that for reparation, the Black American community believes that the United States government owes them approximately $4 trillion in compensation. And looking at it, this again has come out as a challenge, as it is believed that this is the amount of money required to cut the gap between the two communities, that is the white community and the black community, as it will ensure that most of them are at an equal level. However, looking at it from a very logical standpoint, it is quite impossible for the United States government to have such kind of money that can be dashed out to the black individuals. And this again has been one of the major impasses that has prevented this reparation bill from going through. And again, we get to see recent actions, like for instance in 2020, where the racial movements became rampant. That is after the Black Lives Matter movement came up again. We get to understand that also the reparations topic was aroused, and multiple states in the United States of America came up with policies that would ensure that the former descendants of the slaves actually received reparation from these specific states. A good example is the state of California, where we're getting to see that the local government initiated a move that targeted black individuals who are wrongfully discriminated, that is during the housing program. And you get to see that the state government actually bypassed the federal gridlock by awarding 25,000 United States dollars to affected black families, marking a huge step in reparation for the black who have always been looked down upon in centuries. Other states are also trying to push this to become a reality, and we are seeing that they are also bypassing the federal gridlock. And under Trump's leadership right now, we're getting to see that despite of the fact that most states are coming out individually to start offering these reparations to the black individuals, the federal government is still not quite clear about it, as it's still a sensitive issue that requires delicate handling and preparation. Other than that, we again get to understand that not every individual believes that the black American community should be reparated. For example, most whites view it as being unfair, as not all whites are actually slave owners. And other than that, we're getting to see even blacks joining the movement, saying that they don't require reparations from the government. But a majority of the other blacks believe that this reparation will come up as a huge boost to them who have been economically disabled and disadvantaged for a long time, and getting this reparation from the United States government will be the highest form of apology and healing that will be required by the black community. This, as you've seen in the clip shared, is still a debatable issue, and I really hope that you managed to enjoy this video. And I'll suggest that you also hit the like, subscribe, and the share button. Share your comments with me in the comment section. Thank you once again, and see you in the next episode.